Do you like your fiber prints glossy or really glossy? This week we're going to be talking about how to ferrotype a fiber print. Now, ferrotyping is a way to get a super high gloss print on fiber surface. It is not for RC. Glossy RC paper mimics a ferrotyped fiber print. So if you want the super gloss with ease, go for the RC paper. The ferrotyping process is a little bit of work, and I'm going to show you a few different options. We're going to be working from two documents that I have. One are the instructions that came with the Premier steel ferrotyping plate, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. The other is the Kodak document G10 for ferrotyping Kodak papers, and it's got quite a few instructions in here on how to do the process. So this is mostly what I followed. Now, it's hard to find these online, so that's why I'm making the videos, so that you don't have to go find these. We're going to cover the topic. Now, super glossy prints are kind of a tradition in photography. Originally, when they made prints on paper, now we're not talking about the daguerreotype process, which was super glossy. It was a silvered metal plate. But the other process, process called calotype, was a salted print. So it was a piece of parchment or paper that had a matte surface. Well, they wanted more detail and gloss to compute the daguerreotype, so they came up with the albumen print, which is a coating of egg white on the paper, but it's still basically a salt print. So this gave a super glossy surface. When the transition occurred to silver gelatin, they wanted to keep that super gloss surface. Ferrotyping was a way to do that. Nowadays, ferrotyping is not very popular. One, because it's hard to do relative to just letting it air dry, and the semi-gloss surface of a glossy fiber paper has just become much more common in the exhibition arena. It's also extremely difficult to tell the difference between a ferrotyped and non-ferrotyped fiber print once it's framed in behind glass, so there's really not a whole lot of point. But we're going to go ahead and talk about how to do this. So we're going to need a few different supplies. One, of course, are fiber prints. You don't have to ferrotype immediately after the wash. If you air dry them and then decide you want to go back later, just soak them in water for a few minutes until they're nice and floppy and they're ready to go. But then you're also going to need a plate or substrate to ferrotype onto. Now, ferrotyping gets its mirror gloss finish on the surface of the print by using a mirror gloss surface for the plate. And that's very important because any defects, any scratches, gouges, dust, pits, they are going to be transferred to the print. They will not be glossy and they will be visually apparent. So you need to make sure that you get a substrate that is perfectly smooth without defects. But you have a few choices of what to get, so let's go over that. First and foremost would be a ferrotyping plate. Now, it may be hard to see this immediately, but this plate, which was purchased new online, was not so perfect. Let me see if I can show you. Right here, you can see a big old dent. Got a couple more here and here. The corner, this corner is bent really, really bad. Here you can see my camera. It's not a good condition. So that's right out of the package. You have to be very, very careful with that. Now, original plates would have been a piece of steel or stainless steel that was chrome plated in order to get that smooth mirrored finish. It would be polished and then coated and then ready to go. Modern plates, like this one, are a piece of number 8 finish stainless steel. And number 8 finish is mirror finish, but it's just a stock item. Now, it's not completely mirrored. There is a grain rather that moves across the sheet, and you can kind of see it. It doesn't seem to affect the gloss, so when you see it, don't worry, it'll still have a really good gloss on it. But I wouldn't recommend going and ordering a plate like this. It just came in damaged. Most of the prints that I ferrotyped, like this one here, is 11 by 14, but that plate had about a 5 by 7 area for me to actually ferrotype on that didn't have some sort of scratch, dent, or bend in it. So not a good usable plate. But if you're going to shop for one, I would recommend just finding a sheet metal fabricator and seeing if you can just purchase a piece of number 8 stainless steel. You can then get different gauges. This would be, I don't know, maybe 22 gauge. It might be 20 gauge. It doesn't have to be super thick. And you can get as heavy as you want. And by going there and asking to buy it, you can look at it and make sure it's blemish free. It's going to have one of those plastic covers like a piece of plexiglass. So as long as that cover is intact and not scratched through or damaged, and you can feel for any dents, or you can look on the backside, you'll see dents on the backside as well, then you should have a decent piece of metal. Just have it cut down to size and you're ready to go. There's no special coatings or anything like that have to happen. The other thing you can use is plexiglass. So I've got, where's my plexi? Oh, here we are. Sorry for the noise. This is just a divider for my print washer. And it's not completely blemish free, so the print that I made on it was not perfect, but it was pretty darn close. So you can go and just get a piece of 1/8 inch thick plexi from your local hardware store or plastic supplier. Again, just check to make sure it's blemish free, and that should work fine. I actually had really good success with this, so we'll go over prepping that in a few minutes and showing you how it works. Now, it doesn't have to be clear. If you have white plexi, black, anything like that will work. So like I've got my squeegee board right here. If it were clean and scratch free, that would work too. So any plexi will work as long as it doesn't have any blemishes. The last thing you can use, though I don't recommend it, is a big piece of glass. I have a print on here right now, and it's been on here for almost 2 weeks. It does not come off. And actually, this is actually a good way to show you what happens. It is not going to come off. You can see the emulsions peeling off right here. See my fingers under the emulsion? So, while the instructions from Kodak say that glass can be used, I didn't have any success. I tried, I don't know, 3 or 4 prints. I tried prepping it multiple ways. And I have yet to get a good print. There we go. Perfectly ferrotyped. Ready for exhibition. Not a good choice. Wouldn't go with glass. I prepped it several different ways. We tried all sorts of cleaners, waxes, all sorts of different surface treatments, and I was completely unable to get a print that would come off of glass. So even though the Kodak instructions say glass is a possibility, I wouldn't do it. Now, that glass isn't ruined. I can soak it in water and get the emulsion off and then continue to use it for contact prints as I purchased it for, but it's not good for ferrotyping. As you can see, it ruined it. Not just this one, this one, this one, lots of prints. So good thing I have lots of scrap prints from all the videos I make for you guys. So that means we are left with 2 things that worked well. The plexiglass, and the metal plate. So let's move over here to the sink a little bit and I'll show you how I prepped them and got some really nice glossy prints. Here we are with the metal plate, and what we need to do first is prep the surface. Now to do this, there were at one time plenty of Ferrotype polish compounds out there. Nowadays we don't have that sort of selection of stuff. But one thing that is still around that was recommended is Bonami or Bonami, Bonami, however you want to say it. The cake soap. Now I think they actually did re-release this as a cake form for a limited time, but otherwise you can get this stuff from a hardware store, but you want to make sure that you're getting the 1886 original formula. This is the only one that can be used. The others are far more harsh and will actually scratch your plate. So you don't want to use those. You only want to use the 1886 original formula. Now, what we're going to do is just wet our sponge. I've got plenty of water here where I just made a mess. I've got my print soaking. I'm going to put it emulsion down for the moment so it can get nice and wet. We've got a damp sponge, and we're going to sprinkle a little bit of this on here, and you're just going to polish it. We're going to need to add a little more soap. And you're going to kind of make a paste. It doesn't have to be thick. It has to be on there. Now, I am not prepping the whole plate because I've only got a 5x7 area to work with, so I'm only prepping really that area. Okay. All right, now we're going to rinse it off. I find it does take some rinsing to get it all off. All right. And I'm just going to kind of let this drain just to get the majority of water off. You don't need to dry it or anything because our print is wet. All right, now print's been soaking for a few minutes and that's enough. So you're going to need either a roller or a squeegee. So I'm going to use my small squeegee. Just make sure it's a clean one. And put your print on. Don't drain it, and then just squeegee tight contact. There we go. All right, now set it up against the back of your sink and let it dry. All right, it's been about an hour and the print has actually just fallen off on its own and it is super glossed. Let me see if I can catch that reflection of the light here for you. Yeah, there we go, kinda. So we have a super gloss surface and we have a little bit of what's called oyster shelling. That's when it dries too fast. It's fairly warm up here. The humidity is not that high because it's the middle of winter. And oyster shelling, let me see if I can get it there. You can kind of see those striations that move through the gloss vertically here. That's called oyster shelling. And when it dries too fast, it doesn't come off in one big chunk. You can see there's none there. So it dried a little too quick. I haven't found a good solution for that. Maybe a wet, or not a wet, but a lightly damp towel over the print so that it dries slower may work. But otherwise, without that, and again, it's just very slight, it is still a very nice smooth gloss finish. And unless you're catching it by oblique reflection, you're not seeing that oyster shelling. So nothing too bad there. It does get bad. Let me show you one of the damaged prints. All right, so this is one of my first attempts. Let me see if I can get it here. And you can kind of see it here. Well, let me get a good glare. And you may not be able to see it because of the glare. But this whole section from my thumb down didn't even make contact. There, that's a better shot of it. So this is ferrotyped. This isn't. This is just standard glossy air dried print. So this part dried and came off the plate before it could even take the surface. And then this part dried slower and took that super gloss surface. So this has the standard air dried, and this is the ferrotype. And then there's a very clear line where that happens. So that's the worst at its extreme. Let me see if I can find another good example of oyster shelling here. Yeah, kind of here in this corner. Again, catch that glare. If I can catch it. There we go. There. I think you might be able to see some of the ridging that's happened in here. And again, that's from uneven drying. And then there's that line here that goes through where this portion dried before it took the high gloss. And then this is ferrotyped. So uneven drying, you can see some of that oyster shelling, the directional lines drying too quickly. I put this under a fan. So after it dried for about 10 minutes, I put it under a fan. The reason I did that is from the Premiere instructions. It says, for fast 5-minute print drying, place a loaded plate between apron and heated drying. Oh no, that's not print dryer. If no dryer is used, then stand plate on edge against the wall, like I did. Allow air circulation on all sides, which it does. After 10 minutes, you may set up an electric fan to speed drying, which I did. And it caused that oyster shelling, so I would not recommend that. So part of those instructions are for using those dryers, the drum dryers you may have seen where it's got the metal plate and then a fabric cover. I've not had any experience with those, so don't ask me how to use it. Okay, so let's go ahead and put this plate away and look at a plexiglass plate. All right, here we have our plexi plate. Like I said, I'm just using the divider from one of my print washers. It's not ideal, but it's going to work for today's demonstration. If I were going to do this process a lot, I would go get a fresh piece of plexi from the hardware store and just make sure that it's blemish free. Now, we are not going to clean this with Bon Ami. That would scratch it most definitely. Since it says it's never scratched since time began, I still don't trust it on plexi. So we're going to use just a plastic cleaner. This is Brilliant Eyes, and it's made specifically for this. So just use this and a microfiber cloth and clean your plate. Now, this should work just as is, but if you are having consistent sticking issues, you can technically wax your plate. Now, there are a few different options, and it will be up to you to decide which option is going to be the most archival for your personal preferences. Your options are butcher's wax, which I had to look up, is not used by butchers. That's the name of the inventor, and it's often called bowling alley wax. So using a light coat of that on the plate in order to give it a hydrophobic coating, that is a water resistant coating, you can do that. You can also use Renaissance wax for art prints, paintings, things like that. And if you have a low threshold for archival quality, you can use turtle car wax. That will work. Just make sure you buff it all off. Whichever wax you use, you apply it, let it dry to a haze, and then buff it off. And that will create a hydrophobic coating to help prevent sticking. Otherwise, just use it nice and clean. Now your print typically will stick with static electricity, but once it's dry, it'll just peel right off. All right, and now the process is the same. Now that it's clean, we're going to just put it on and squeegee off the extra water. So don't drain it. You want that water in between the emulsion and the substrate. That is what you're going to squeeze out to get nice tight contact. And I like to work from the center outward. I just feel like I'm eliminating air bubbles that way. And there we go. So that is now stuck on there nice and tight. And we're going to just tip it there and let it dry. Okay, well, I've come back after the print is dry, and I guess I didn't have a lot of static on there this time because it fell right off. But I've got that super glossy surface. Get that nice glare on there. And it worked out pretty well. I actually find this easier than the metal plate, but none of them were super difficult. It's just neither of them were perfect surfaces for the gloss. Because looking at this, I do have a couple of blemishes and imperfections. I'm not seeing any oyster shelling, so I feel like this one dried better, maybe because of its size. The smaller one just dried very fast because it was small. This one seems to have dried more evenly. But I do have a couple of imperfections. I can see a couple of little spots and pits that were on the plexi. No major gouges though, like a line or anything. So overall, this actually worked out as well or better than the metal plate. But it still just seems like there's something. Yeah, I can see a very slight texture pattern in one section. That must have just been little bits or scratches on the plastic. But a more pristine piece may work better. And that is ferrotyping in a nutshell. So if you want that super gloss surface, get yourself either a plate, piece of metal, like I said, number 8 stainless steel, and or a piece of clean plexi. Just make sure they're clean. Put a light coat of wax on the plexi if you feel like you are getting sticking. Otherwise, squeegee or roller it on there and then let it dry. The slower, the better. And you should get a super gloss surface. Is it worth it? I think I'll just go get some RC glossy surface if I'm going to really want a glossy surface. Because this isn't my taste for fiber. It might be yours. Alright, that's going to do it for this week. If you would like to help support this channel, you can get t-shirts with graphics such as this from my Teespring store down in the description. You can go to my Patreon page and help support me there. All those things go towards making prints for me to ruin for your benefit and metal plates that don't work because they're all bent up. But I greatly appreciate the support. Thanks for watching, and we will see you next time.